Are those code words, or are you actually smelling cat pee? Do you ever go out into the vineyards and plow? When you think about Japanese wines, your first reaction is?
Okay.
What do you feel like doing? I know, you feel like talking and tasting. Well, for you, it'll be mainly listening. But please contribute in the comments, and then it'll be like you're here in the conversation for talk and
Taste.
That's right. So, Timothy.
Yes.
Today, I actually have some questions for you.
Hey, is this some kind of interrogation, Max?
We don't have the lighting for that, but if that's your thing, I could probably tie you down.
No waterboarding.
I have a couple of questions for you today,
yes.
Timothy. Specifically, in a very early episode, we learned that you're from a winemaking family. Like they grow grapes, they make wine. So you grew up like in the vineyard. You were like a little grape man.
I cut my teeth, Max, in the family wine business, that's for sure.
That's for sure. And then you actually studied that at university, right?
I did,
like,
yes.
What is it? Is it like a 4-year wine university?
It is. So it's a 4-year university degree called oenology, which I think we covered early on as well, which is winemaking. And yeah, it obviously sounds a little bit unusual that you would go and study wine and drink wine and do wine things for 4 years at university. But of course, essentially it was a lot of science. So if you don't like science, I would say it's not for you.
Does that actually come in handy? Because when you're like a kid studying algebra and you're like, I'm never going to use this, and they're like, you need it to be a good citizen, and you're like, I don't want to be a good citizen, and then you end up doing a YouTube channel about booze.
And then, of course, was the wine tasting. So you did things like sensory studies, where every Wednesday afternoon for 4 hours, you would just taste wines and get the different wine styles and learn all about that. I think the funniest episode there was when everybody was tasting and there was a loud bang, and clearly somebody had been drinking and not spitting into the spittoons in front and was a little bit inebriated and fell off their stool. It was fantastic in terms of an experience, and then at the end of it you come out and hopefully you're able to produce some reasonable wine, so it's a lot of fun.
Do you ever go out into the vineyards and plow?
No, I haven't been guilty of that, Max.
I would think that would be an essential part of an agrarian education. In the course of your education, are you actually learning to smell the raspberry, or are you learning that this is a symbol of quality, this is how I communicate this aspect of this wine to other people? Are those code words, or are you actually smelling cat pee?
No, that's absolutely correct. So one of the key things about when you're learning to make wine and taste wine, of course, is that you need to be able to break down the individual elements of the wine. So I mean, you start from basics like adding sugar to water. This is what sweetness tastes like. You add lemon juice to water. This is what acidity can taste like. You know, you add these different things, and once you start getting more of a broad palette, you can then start mixing them together. So as you said, you can have 2, 3, 4, until you get onto wines when you have, hundreds of different aromas and flavor compounds within that, and you're obviously getting much better at being able to pull out the individual aromas and characteristics. So even though it does sound at times like people are just making it up, you can, with practice, get very good at describing things that are very complicated.
Because we're talking about wine, and because now we know that you truly are a wine expert, I have something for you that will perhaps blow your wine mind. Think of it as a Japanese Romane Conti.
Okay.
This is a Japanese. Now, when you think about Japanese wines, your first reaction is?
Okay.
Exactly. But there are actually some wineries in Japan now that are developing some nice stuff and have a good reputation. Today I have something special for you. This was designed in Japan.
Wow.
It is the Muscat Bailey
Muscat
A. MBA.
Muscat Bailey A. Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit familiar with this grape variety, but I'll be honest, I haven't drunk a lot of it in my time. I'm looking forward to tasting it. Often, the Muscat Bailey A image I have is usually quite light, it's usually quite fruity. I mean, almost a little bit Beaujolais Nouveau-esque.
Okay, interesting.
So let's test it out. Let's see the color, of course.
Oh, I can see it's coming out light.
Yeah, often the Japanese wines, they don't have the tannin concentration, they don't have, the really richness, especially in the red wines. So the color is often very light. It's more like a Pinot Noir. Wow, I mean, no, that is light. If you were to just look at the color, you're going to say either that's maybe Lambrusco, or it's a Pinot Noir, it's a Gamay, it's a Beaujolais perhaps. It's really light in color. Let's see what it's doing on the nose. Wow, that is really fruity. I mean,
It's
really
extremely fruity, yeah.
There's candy, there's lots of red fruits. I'm getting lots of like sweet cherry characters. There's a little bit of that bubble gum. I think we've mentioned that a few times in previous episodes.
Yeah, there's it's a little bit of like a sour cherry.
Also, sorry, this reminds me a lot of a jam donut.
Okay.
So you know when you have when you're younger, perhaps, and you have the
You mean
sugar,
younger like this morning?
yeah, the sugar, yeah, your breakfast, the sugar coated, and you have the hot jam in the middle.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's a thing in the States.
We like our hot jams.
I'm expecting this to be sweet on the palate, but let's check it out. It's actually really dry. Yeah, there's not, I would say, yeah, that might be bone dry actually. There's not much residual sweetness at all. It's really fruity. I've got to say, there's not a lot of body. It's quite thin on the palate. It's just quite a dry, perceived fruity style red wine that I think would be perfect with very light dishes, things that have like a lot of mineral to them. So on that topic, it's time for TQ'd. So Timothy's top tip today is my general rule of thumb with Japanese wine is if you can, pair it with Japanese food. Obviously, the old saying, if it grows together, it goes together. Yep. If you want to find something that works really well with Japanese wine, because it doesn't have that huge amount of tannin and body, often it means that it goes quite well with things like sashimi, things that are quite rich in umami. Those types of dishes I find work really well. So Japanese food, Japanese wine, really your best bet when it comes to looking for a wonderful mariage.
Yeah, you can always trust those classic expressions like, I'm a grower, not a shower. You know what I have? Not just a Platinum Amex, I have man knowledge.
Oh, is it time for
Max Facts! This is a native Japanese grape variety. And the guy who discovered this, or who made it really, became one of the co-founders of Suntory, and he had a vineyard out in Niigata. As you may know, the Pacific side and the Sea of Japan side are quite different environments. In fact, when we go snowboarding, as friends do, you basically take the bullet train, you leave Tokyo, you're in like maybe a light jacket, you hit a tunnel at some point and you enter basically the Japanese Alps, that environment on the Sea of Japan side, and you have like meters of snow and it's cold, etc. So the guy who invented this grape was out in Niigata Prefecture where it's quite cold, and he was worried that his grapes were getting killed by the frost. So he designed a grape, or bred a grape, that would bloom late, blossom late, and then mature early. So he'd skip those cold aspects of that environment and came up with this. And I'm pleasantly surprised by it.
Speaking of bloomers, should we move on to the talk and taste scoring for today and see how many pink Speedos we can get?
Let's do it. This is your department, Senor Speedo.
Okay, so I'm going to put this into context that if I were to order this at a Japanese restaurant and I was having some, you know, as we said, maybe a nice otsukuri, a sashimi plate and some lovely light dishes to go with this wine, and I ordered this off the menu, I would actually be quite pleased with it. I think it would work really well with the Japanese food, and I would be more than happy to offer a glass of this to my fellow stablemate Maximus next door. So I'm going to give this 4 pink Speedos out of 5. I think that's quite a good score.
I mean, hats off to Japan for this. In fact, I think you should buy this.
Oh wait, is it time for?
So, as I said, the plantings of wine grapes in Japan are fairly meager, right? There's not a lot of production at this point. It's just getting off the ground. They're developing specific techniques for this environment. Of course, it can be very, very hot and humid in the summer. This, only 150 hectares planted of this grape varietal, Muscat Bailey A, in Japan right now, native to Japan. If you want to go Japanese, you want to go wine, you want to go exclusive by definition, only 150 hectares, check it out. I'm guessing you probably haven't had Muscat Bailey A yet. However, you might have had something that kind of blew your mind that you'd like to share with us. What's your weirdest, most interesting, most revealing, most surprising wine discovery experience? Put it in the comments. I feel like this was a fun episode. I had a good time. Did you have a good time?
I had a great time. It's always a fun episode.
That's right.
Always a good time with you, Max.
So get your banana hammocks ready because we'll be coming at you again next week with another episode of Talk and Taste. See you then. Diploma from Wine University. It's everything that it's cracked up to be. But please remember